Have you ever wondered if the mental health advice you're getting online is accurate? Well, we're going to review some common advice and give you our intake as professional therapists. So, welcome to the reflection room. I'm Hannah, and this is Natalie. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk
Good.
about this one because I feel like swiping through, I just see stuff all the time, and I think, "Ooh, I don't know about that." And
Yes.
then others I do agree with. So, I'm excited to hear what you think about these too.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing, like, what you ended up finding, but, yeah, I have those same, reactions when I'm going through, and there are some things that I'm like, "Oh, that was actually really great, that was on point," and then there are other times where I'm like, "Oh, I hope not a lot of people have, like, listened to this." You cringe, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and give you my first one that
Okay.
I kind of ran across or have heard clients talk about. But I feel like this one's been going around for a while. You'll have to let me know what you think. People using setting boundaries, like almost in a toxic way. So, like protecting my peace or cutting off
Yes.
anyone who drains my energy. Like, that kind of talk on there.
Yes.
Have you seen those videos?
Absolutely. I've seen the videos, I've talked to the people, and
Yeah.
it's so true, and, I think with this kind of stuff, oftentimes it's birthed from a real need. There was a period of time, let's just say a few years ago, where people were realizing, "Wait a minute, I don't have to, accept this kind of treatment, or I don't have to be in these kinds of relationships, or I can draw the line in the sand," but which was moving in a healthier way, but and then I feel like sometimes our society or just culture at large just takes one thing and just, like, shifts the pendulum all the way to the other side, and oftentimes they say excess, excessiveness in any direction can be unhealthy. With everything, there has to be some kind of balance there. And so I agree. I feel like for the most part, you hear those kinds of things and you're just like, protecting your peace. I mean, there are always going to be challenges in relationships. Like it's normal. Anytime you're interacting with people, we work with people at work, you have family members, you have loved ones. Anytime there are two people coming together with like differences of opinion or different experiences, different goals or desires for outcome, there's going to be conflicts. There's going to be
Yeah.
challenges along the way. There are going to be disagreements. Like, that's normal. So it's like, where do we draw the line here, kind of thing?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think people do take it to the extreme. And I feel like there's a difference between distress tolerance and avoidance. And these
Hmm.
people that take it too far are just avoiding it altogether. So then they're not even able to handle any kind of distress in conflict or relationship. So they just
Hmm.
cut everybody out and then you have nobody, but we need people. So
We do, because then you're dealing with
yeah.
another issue, which is loneliness.
Yes,
Right? So
exactly.
it's like you've just exchanged one for the other, but you bring up a great point. I think that's a great example, the one that you brought up, and I know for me in sessions with clients, we're talking about boundaries all the time, and it was a very trending. I don't know if it still is. It kind of has probably tapered off, but for a while there, it was trending, and everybody was talking about boundaries, and there wasn't even an accurate definition half the time of what boundaries,
Yeah.
actually are. So I think that's a great one that you brought up for sure. That was good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you ready for my first one?
I am. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Okay, so I saw and I wrote down the words on here so that I can read them to you exactly how they were. But I saw this video and there was a woman who I don't know, she was cleaning her crystals or something. I don't know what she was doing. But she had some crystals out in front of her. She was cleaning them. And while she was doing that, she said, "You're not the only one who feels this. You are okay. You, you are okay for not replying. You're okay for leaving early. You're okay for canceling plans. And you're okay for having your energy be low." And I thought to myself, like, but with some of those things, so like canceling plans, like isolating, people's energies being low, and not replying to someone, I mean, those could potentially be signs of a deeper issue. And so I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that one.
Yeah, I feel like that's for a very specific audience. But somebody like you're saying with depression could take that and just think that what they're doing is okay, but they're actually warning signs that there's some serious depression going on. So I
Mhm.
think, yes, it can be helpful for like the people pleaser or the
Mhm.
person who's overbooked themselves and is just like
Mhm.
overwhelmed with everything and they need a break. Yeah, that's okay. But then putting out blanket statements like that can get really dangerous. And I think there's a
Mhm.
lot of mental health advice out there that they don't specify who it's for. They just
Absolutely.
put it out there.
I agree. Yeah, you're right about that. It's those blanket statements, not realizing like who your audience is, who you're talking to, and you're absolutely right. There might be somebody that's listening to her that's like, I'm struggling with this. Might warrant, working with a professional, talking to someone, potentially getting on some medication if that's the route they want to take. But meanwhile, they may not reach out to anyone for support or help because here they are listening to an influencer or someone, online that's saying it's okay to feel that way. And I think also she didn't provide any like time, like a frequency or even like time frames. And so we know that a lot of times we're always asking, even our assessments are like, how long have you been experiencing this for? Has it been for
Yeah.
2 weeks? Has it been for a month? And time frames are so important because it can go from a typical experience that we all kind of have with the ebbs and flows of life into something that is that's clinical in nature. And so I thought that was the other thing that really stood out for me with that video. And I was like, oh, that could be, I don't know, some murky waters that she's stepping into there.
Yes, definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
that can be really scary. And I feel like there's even more out there where people give those kind of like permission slips where it's
Mhm.
probably disguising other mental illnesses, like not just
Mhm.
depression, but lots of them.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, permission slips. You're right about that. And there are some people, like with this one specifically, I'm sure there are some people that there's a phrase that says like they were just waiting for permission to be able to do X, Y,
Mhm.
and Z, right? Whether it's like to end the relationship or start a new one or, to do those kinds of things. And some people, they might look for that or need that confirmation from like friends and loved ones, like, hey, do you think this is the right decision or the right call? But yeah, then in other cases, it's very serious, like what they're dealing with and
Mhm.
experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one. I'm glad you found that
Mhm.
video. Actually, speaking of like relationships, this one I think you're gonna find funny, but like couples are dating advice from non-professionals. So like rules for texting, masculine, feminine energy. If they wanted to, they would. Theory. What do you
Mhm.
think about that kind of mental health advice online?
Oh man, that's a good one. It is so saturated, absolutely saturated. For a while there, you would see the mental health professionals that were, giving that kind of feedback or even like relational coaches. But now everyone is really kind of talking about their experiences. And from their experiences, they're then giving advice to other people who are in different relationships with different people and who have a different experience. And so I think it goes back to those like, blanket statements. And I would say this topic, so when it comes to relationship and dating and the do's and the don'ts and what's right and what's not, what are red flags to look for, green
Mhm.
flags to look for, with all this kind of stuff, it really depends on the individual situation and scenario and people, and having context is so important. So to say like, if he wanted to, he would, kind of thing is like, well, I don't know, maybe in some cases, but like, can we get a little bit more information on like what's going on here?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those are hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's so much nuance to every situation. So there's no way you can just make blanket statements like that. Like, I think it's feeding off of this theory that like certainty sells. Like, if you're certain about something because you're getting this statement that everyone who does this is like that, or anyone who does this is not good for you, then it feels safer. Like, it feels like a safer
Hmm.
option. But then we're taking out all the room for error. Like, there's people, no one's going to be perfect. So I think
No,
it's really piling on top. It's just getting bigger and bigger online, at
it
least in my
is.
algorithm.
That's funny. So I think you bring up a good point with certainty, and I think that's what people are looking for. They're looking like outside, like external, I don't know, validation or confirmation on whether or not they should be in this relationship. And you're right, because no one is perfect, but sometimes people are really quick to close that door and end that relationship in the honor or the spirit of like, not entering into a toxic relationship or not being in an unhealthy relationship with someone who is not in a good place. But then we forget that it's through like challenges and through conflict, oftentimes, like if they are properly resolved, that those are the times where we grow the most. And so, one of the questions I would ask someone who's listening to this that is wondering, do I do this? Or am I one of those people is like, do you find yourself in very similar situations time and time again? And then that just means that there might not necessarily be, you might not be providing yourself with the space and the time needed in order to grow within a relationship alongside of someone else who's also on their journey and evolving as well. And so I think sometimes we like prevent ourselves from having that opportunity to grow within a relationship when we're so quick to close
Mhm.
those doors.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And I think that advice is much different than what we're seeing online because from a clinical therapist, it would be, looking for warning signs of abuse. It would be like those
Mhm.
very serious ones, but we wouldn't be trying to help people figure out those little minute issues that are like not even harmful. So I'm thinking of like, are they isolating you from your friends and family? Like those big ones. That's what I would
Mhm.
be fishing for. But in this case, you're trying to get to know a person. So get to know a
Yes,
person. Yeah.
exactly. Give yourself that opportunity. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And then also, I think with this kind of advice, let's say a person takes it, they end their relationship, they've not received any guidance on what to do next. Like what does that look like? What should that time in between relationships or in between dating look like? Like what kind of work should
Mhm.
we be doing on an individual basis? And so when we're taking little snippets from the internet like that, and we might make a decision on a relationship, but then it still leaves us in a place of like feeling lost and confused because we don't have that continuous person that's working alongside of us to figure out what the next step should be. But that was a good one. That was a really good one, Hannah. So this
Thanks.
one, I don't know, like what I'm interested in your thoughts. I saw this. It was on TikTok, and there was this lady, and she was dancing. She was definitely like feeling joy, right? Which was great. Was great. And then the words above her said, "All thanks to Lexapro." And so I'm just curious, like, what message do you think she's sending to people out there who are looking and seeing, like, oh, I want to feel like that? And then she is saying that it's strictly because of Lexapro. I'm just curious about your thoughts.
I actually have had a couple clients recently say the very same thing. And I'm like, I feel like I have to reframe it for them because you're in therapy, you're doing the work. Like you're doing your
Yes.
homework, you're applying all of what we're talking about to your life. You're actually making changes. So why would it be just the medication that's doing that? Well,
Mhm,
I think I'd have to do a lot of psychoeducation with people sometimes on that because yeah, Lexapro is meant to help, but it's not going to fix it. It's not going to
mhm,
fix your relationships. It's not going to fix your habits or what you think about yourself or your self-worth. It's just going to give you like a little boost and then you have to
mhm,
do the work. So I
mhm,
think that can be really scary too because then people are going to I think we saw this a lot during COVID. People would just go to the doctor and there was like a huge spike in use of
yes,
antidepressants, but
mhm,
everyone was isolated. So, like, that's the real reason is because
mhm,
people didn't have people. So, I think that's a really big problem when people are like putting all the weight on antidepressants.
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought too. It was like, it might be part of that, but there's so many other factors that, like just that little clip, we have no idea like what led to her getting onto it. If there have been any changes in her life since she started, that she's actively made, like any circumstances that have changed that would contribute to that. Did she make any changes to her diet, or she's clearly dancing, so she's getting some movement in, so that helps with
Yeah.
overall mood. I just yeah, I get the point of it, I get that she's there was like this message of like it's okay to take medication, and I do appreciate that side of it.
Mhm.
But yes, it made me think like, are we putting all of our eggs in one basket? And then the flip side of that was this: what if somebody is taking Lexapro, does not feel like her? Are they going to think like, gosh, nothing is going to work for me, and it just kind of like leaves a feeling of hopelessness, like it isn't doing that for me? Am I like beyond repair essentially? And so it
Mhm.
made me think about those people that might be seeing that and maybe getting that message from her.
Yeah, that is such a good point. I didn't even think about the flip side.
Mhm.
But yeah, that could
Mhm.
definitely be because not every medication works for every brain.
No.
People are gonna have
Mhm.
side effects or, whatever.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's a
Exactly.
really good
Mhm.
one. Yeah. Um, well, my next one, again, I don't have a specific video for it, but I do hear this from clients too, as well as online. But I feel like there's a lot of self awareness, but sometimes people can use it like, that's just my anxiety, or that's my trauma, or I can't do this because of my fill in the blank. So
Mhm.
I feel like a term for that might be like weaponized self awareness, but have you seen videos like that or had clients talk about stuff like that?
Both. Yeah, definitely both. And again, I feel like, I guess the question is, what are we doing with this awareness? Because awareness is important and it's needed, like understanding, insight, reflection, education, like knowledge of whatever it is that's going on. Like all of those things are really important. And you mentioned like psychoeducation earlier, right? So that's a part of what we do, is like providing our clients with that information to help them then decisions they feel like are best for their lives. But if there isn't any personal agency that's going along with that, so taking that information and then saying, okay, these are the parts that I can control, or this is what I want to do with that in order to improve my situation in some way, like taking some kind of action, then I feel like it turns into like what you're just saying, right? Where it's like, so I don't want to use that word, but it just might be the reason why they did, X, Y, and Z, or it's just a way to kind of explain, some of their behaviors or reasons for avoiding things, and not
Mhm,
exposing them to certain situations. And so it can become a hindrance, I think, in some ways. So I think the key factor there is like the agency piece. Like, what are we going to do with the
mhm.
information that we have now? And is there anything that we can do about it? And if so, what? So, yeah, what are your thoughts? That was a good one.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it kind of made me think about what you said with the dating advice is like they're online, they're talking about their experience with
Mm,
whatever fill in the blank mental illness is going on. And it can kind of reinforce things for other people if you're like following that person, or there's like communities online that reinforce that stuckness. Like
mhm,
they're not reinforcing the change part, like the action behind it, like
mhm,
doing the work on themselves. So I think that can be really harmful because it could encourage someone to stay where they're at and not like I don't want to use the word excuse either because it's a valid reason to experience the things you experience, but there should also be work involved. Like that's what
mhm.
this is about. I think it can get dangerous that way where it's just reinforcing this living in difficult situations.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's why I love the roles that because we play multiple ones sometimes, and the roles that we play in people's lives. And I think one of them is that like empowering, speaking some hope into their lives and empowering them to take action on whatever pieces they can when it comes to their situation and circumstances. And so having someone, like us, that they can talk to, where they realize, okay, so this part might be constant here,
Mhm,
but these are some of the other things that I might be able to do something about and slowly make some changes that might then have some kind of impact on those constants that we're talking about, as opposed to just kind of like settling into it and thinking like this is it,
mhm.
if that makes sense. So yeah, that was a really good
Yeah,
one. I loved that.
thanks.
All right, so I have one last one, and this one I'm curious about, like what you're gonna say.
Oh,
Okay, so it was a lady. She was talking, and she said, so it might be a little bit tricky here, because On the surface, I think it sounds great, like great advice or feedback. She said there's a cost to saying I'm fine. And she was saying that, sometimes we say I'm fine, although, we all kind of do that there are times where we may not really be fine. And so she was saying that the cost of that is called, or she referred to it as emotional suppression, so it's just like not giving yourself the outlet that you need in order to fully express what you're feeling. And so then your emotions kind of stay suppressed. And then, there's consequences of that, I guess. Do you see anything wrong with that at all? I'm curious.
I My first thought was, what if the person asking is not a safe person? Like, you don't
Yes.
wanna share you don't wanna share what's really
Yes.
going on if that person is not safe to
Mhm.
hold those emotions. Yeah, I don't I
Yeah.
think, yes, like, what if your therapist is asking, yeah, you should
Mhm.
you should express what you're really feeling,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
also, you may not have the words for it. Like, sometimes you gotta
Mhm.
kinda dig it up and figure out how to verbalize that with your
Mhm.
therapist or a safe person. But yeah, what did
Mhm.
you think about that?
Yeah, exactly what you said. I thought to myself, well, what if they felt like that was not the interaction or the person or the time and the setting to just kind of open Pandora's box? I think that there's wisdom in that. Now, she might have been referring to like never opening up and saying like anything to anyone. And so yes, I do think that that would, lead to there's some problems there just because you don't have any positive outlets. But there are times where you might say, "I'm fine," even though you aren't, because you don't feel like I have the emotional bandwidth or the capacity in order to get into all of the details right now, or I don't feel like this person is a safe person that I can talk to and really kind of share what
Mhm,
I'm going through. Or I know that I don't know, they're going through something challenging, and I might be disappointed with their, response if I do say what I have to say because they don't have the capacity. Or yeah, so I think it's okay to pick and choose when you feel like it's a good time to not say I'm fine and instead to, say something else if that's the
mhm,
case. But I think and at some point you want to, but I think it's also okay to pick and choose when that happens. So yeah, I had a very similar thought
mhm.
as yours for sure.
I think with all of our examples, there is nuance in there. Like, some of it can be helpful and some, like,
Mhm.
very good advice, but it's for a specific population or
Mhm.
someone who's going through a specific issue. So, I think
Mhm.
it's just really wise to be careful what you're taking in.
I agree. Yeah. And I think like having someone that you can trust, that you can say like, "Hey, I saw someone that was talking about symptoms of ADHD and I feel like some of that I don't know, might be to me. Any thoughts on that?" And so I always see it as like, for me, I think social media, I know we're moving in a direction where a lot of people rely on that. And I think it could be a good starting point for people. I don't see anything wrong with that. If you're in the headspace, and at a place where you could hear about other people's journeys and stories and experiences, and not like be triggered by it or anything, I think it could be a really good starting point. I don't think it should be an ending point. And I think that's kind of like what we're talking about here is like it's okay to be exposed to something or to gather some information or to hear about someone's experience, but then taking that, processing it, reflecting on it, and then sharing it with someone who you feel like would be a good person to bounce some of that off of, I think is really important. Like you don't want to stop there. And so that would probably be my biggest like feedback when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's really
Mhm.
good.
Yeah. Any final thoughts or anything? This was actually
Mm.
fun. I really enjoyed this.
This was really fun, and I was actually thinking of a kind of a similar idea we could do, which would be, like, quoting, videos we find online and trying to guess if they're influencer or therapist. To
Ah,
try and see, like,
that is a
if we
really
can
good
tell
one.
the difference.
That is a really good one, actually. Well, funny. Let's do that. Let's definitely do that. Funny enough, there are times. So
Okay.
it's funny you bring that up. There are times where I'll look and I'll like hear what they say, and then I'll look to see like what their name is, because usually they'll have it in their name, like doctor, or counselor, or therapist.
Right.
Yeah, and then sometimes it's not in there, right? So it's funny you say that, because I will kind of look sometimes and take a peek
Mhm.
and see like, oh, is this someone that I could be taking some, advice from? But yeah, I think it's a great idea. I definitely think we should.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to plan for that. But, do you have any thoughts closing out?
No, yeah, I think it was really fun, and it's relatable, because I think we all like use the word algorithm, and I think we all have seen one too many videos like these, and so I think it was really helpful to go over that, and to realize that it's not black and white. Nothing is really black and white. There's so much gray area, and it really does depend on your individual experience and story. And so I think that's why it's so important to go from the electronics and the social media platforms to talking to someone in real life, in person, about this. And so I think
Mhm.
that is probably the key. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was great. I had so much fun.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for joining me and doing this. I think it was great. And then thank you guys for watching. Hopefully, you really enjoyed it and you were able to laugh along with us, and have probably seen some videos that are very similar to them as well. So hopefully, they were very relatable. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, we hope that you guys keep reflecting.